Hello and good evening. Welcome to our community town hall on post election reflections. We are so thankful and happy that you are here today. Welcome to Black Mom Society. I am Dr. Green. I am here with an illustrious panel and illustrious experts of women, moms, mom teas, god mom teas, aunties, all of it in between. And we are here to talk about everything that is this post election. With the recent shift from the election, now is the time for us to come together as women, as moms, to discuss what's next. This community gathering is a space to reflect on the outcomes, explore what's next, the impact on our families, well being, and find practical ways to navigate our resiliency, our mental health, our everything that is in our communities, our wellness, and us. And we will be here to share support. Any questions that you have, any comments, please put them in the chats on your streams. You can text however you feel, just let us know. We are here. And I am so thankful to have our moderator here, Ms. Twain Montgomery. She is a dedicated educator with over a decade of experience. She holds a Bachelor of Science and a dual certification in elementary and special education from Mount St. Mary's University. She also earned a Master of Science in Curriculum and Development, along with an Administrator 1 certification from McDaniel College. As a team leader, Ms. Montgomery has extensive experience in supporting both students and teachers, ensuring collaborative and effective instructional practices. Her philosophies emphasize fostering inclusive environments tailored to the diverse learning needs of her students, advocating for individualized instruction, and promoting each student's growth and success. In her current role as a special education administrator, she ensures that her department is fully equipped to support students with individualized education programs. And as you can see, we are just blessed to have such a great person to moderate and run and basically get us through this panel. So thank you, Ms. Montgomery.
Thank you, Dr. Green, and to Black Mom Society. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm honored to moderate this important post election discussion. And today, as Dr. Green emphasized, we'll explore the impact of this election on issues close to our hearts as Black mothers and momties. We're gathered a wonderful panel of experts, advocates, and leaders who are here to help us make sense of the election outcomes and what they mean for us. Each of them bring a unique perspective on the key issues affecting Black families today. Our first panelist is Dr. Jima Kate. She's an education professional from Washington, D.C., with over 20 years experience in the field. She has worked as a teacher, instructional coach, and school principal. She has also served as Peace Corps Response volunteer in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, working as a literacy education specialist with the Ministry of Education, where she collaborated with education officials to support and develop the implementation of literacy programs and policies. Currently, she works with the United States Department of Education, supporting schools in the U.S. island territories of Guam, America Samoa, Virgin Islands, and the Marina Islands. Dr. Jumakate holds a bachelor's degree in English from Howard University, a master's degree in secondary English education from Trinity Washington University, and a doctorate in education administration and policy studies from the George Washington University.
Hi, I'm happy to be with you all today.
Thank you. Our second panelist, Ms. Keisha Marvin, possesses 22 years of educational experience leading for equity and ensuring high student achievement in urban school districts. Ms. Marvin holds a bachelor's degree in African American Studies and English Literature from the University of California in Los Angeles, and a Master's of Education degree in Teaching and Cross-Curricular Studies and Language Acquisition. As a former English teacher, Ms. Marvin has designed intervention curricula and taught all levels of secondary English. She has a proven track record of leading system wide professional learning around anti racist pedagogy and leadership designed to elevate equitable teaching and learning outcomes. Okay, Ms. Marvin. Our third panelist, Dr. Sterling Fox, recently retired as an assistant professional of Medgar Evers College. She holds a PhD in nursing science from the Graduate Center at City University of New York, a master's in science in nursing with certification as a family nurse practitioner from Columbia University School of Nursing, and a bachelor's of science in nursing from State University of New York Downstate Medical Center. Throughout her teaching career, Dr. Sterling Fox has covered a broad range of subjects, including medical surgical nursing, health assessments of the adult clinic, health planning and policy issues, nutrition concepts and applications, and preceptorship in leadership and management. Dr. Sterling Fox research interests span various areas, including nursing education, care for the homebound elderly, and notable health promotion. Her doctoral research focused on factors associated with health promoting behavior of APS workers and professionals who support vulnerable adults, and specific emphasis on examining six health promoting behaviors: one, stress management; two, nutrition; three, exercise; four, spirituality; five, social relationships; and six, health responsibility. She has facilitated health promotion workshops locally, nationally, and internationally for students, individuals, and groups, and has authored several publications on her work. Originally hailing from Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Sterling Fox is a 19-year cancer survivor. She's a proud mother of two adult children, Marvin and Candy, and grandchildren of two, Matthew and Samantha. She believes that with God, all things are possible. Her guiding words are forgive, live, laugh, and love.
Thank you. Thank you.
And our fourth, yes, and our fourth panelist, Steffi and Delapre. Steffi is a clinical and public health veterinarian in the state of Maryland and DC. Steffi was born in Queens, New York, but spent her childhood living in Port-au-Prince in Haiti before returning to New York. After completing her veterinarian degree, Steffi lived in Pennsylvania for a few years, working for the U.S. Department of Agriculture while commuting to Baltimore to offer veterinary services in the city. Though she will always be a New Yorker, Baltimore has also captured her heart, and Steffi officially moved to the city in 2022. Steffi went on to complete a public health degree after her move. She enjoys staying active in the community and bringing people together. She can often be found hosting an event or for her neighbors or friends, knocking on doors, helping people stay civically engaged, or attending numerous community events with local organizations. Steffi is passionate about anything involving justice, health equity, policy, and conversation. Steffi also serves as the Baltimore City captain for the Maryland chapter of Win with Black Women and is an active volunteer with both When We All Vote and Vote Save America. When not working or volunteering, Steffi can be found running, hiking, hitting the street festival, leading or taking dance classes, or listening to an audiobook. And as you can see, your panel is rich and diverse. And so we're going to dive right into our discussion. And if you would like to participate, please respond with questions in the chat. Our first question, what are the key takeaways from this election that stand out to you? And again, this will be a roundtable discussion, so our panelists can join in and respond as they feel appropriate.
I could start us off. That's okay. So there's, for one thing, every election, after each election, we always go through a period of finger pointing, whichever party you're at, and especially when you're in the losing party. So there's a lot of that going around, and I try to be conscious of that and kind of uh, try not to fall so easily in that spiral. But I did take a look at kind of the closing poll numbers of who voted, with a strong caveat that those numbers are not 100% representative. They're kind of the best shot we have right now, but hopefully everybody understands that the way they're taken, they don't provide a perfect image of who voted and how they voted. But they're all we have at the moment. But when I looked at them, I focused on age particularly. I focused on race, but I focused on age. And basically, big picture, this is a conversation that's been had way before the election, but you can clearly see here that there is a wider gap among. Sorry, I focus on age and gender. So there's a wider gap among our younger population when it comes to men and women versus our older population. The gap is 15% between younger men and women. It drops, so that's like 29 and under. It drops to 9% around 30 to 44-year-old, and 5% in the 45 to 64-year-old category. So we're seeing that kind of gender divide widening in the younger population, and that really has me paying attention. And I hope everybody's paying attention, but I can assure you that the winning side is paying attention, because that was publicly a strategy of theirs, to ensure that a younger male population sees them more as the likely the population or the group that they'd like to support. So that's big picture, the age and the gender group. And I definitely would love to dig in further on that. I have some thoughts, but for now, that's kind of what I'll put on the table.
I'd like to add to that as well. Thank you. I feel that when I reflect on gender and race and Black women leading the way and supporting Kamala Harris, I feel as though historically we have been the ones to create the conditions for success, and we continue to do so in this election. That is like my key takeaway, is that we continue as Black women to lead that charge when it comes to galvanizing and supporting one another. And I feel proud that I had hope. And I want to just keep it right there, that I feel proud for that piece, that key takeaway for us as Black women coming together.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with your point. In addition to just in general, the power that we as Black women have maintained for so many years, just to go in the opposite direction, it really seems like a lot of the main issues, the focus of the winning party were not on issues that necessarily would benefit Black women or families or children in general. And so one of the things that I took away from it was what is important to those persons who are supporting the winning party. And in this case, for those who voted for the winning party, it's clear to me that, the women's health is not a priority. It's clear to me that making education accessible and affordable is not a priority. And those are areas where Black women have been, have been held out of. We've been held to the side when it comes to health. We've been pushed away when it comes to educational opportunities. And so we've always had to fight a little bit harder, to have access to those things. We all hear the stories about, Black women who've had to learn how to advocate for themselves, just so that they will be able to get the health services that they feel like they deserve. And so, this election is really, brought to the forefront what is important to half of our society and what isn't. And I think that that's something that we really need to keep in mind moving forward, because this period is only 4 years. We're going to have another opportunity to bring our voices to the table. And, we need to be loud and let people know, what are the things that we care about? What are the things that we need to, prioritize as we're moving forward?
I agree with you. I just want to add a couple of things. With this election, deep under, I had a fear and a persistent worry. And my worry was regarding having a Black woman as a president in the United States of America. Woman, one, because I believe United States of America is one of the few countries in the world that has not yet have a woman as president.
Mm-hmm.
A Black woman is another story. A Black Caribbean woman is another story. Evidently, I don't believe that this election was about economics and immigration and all those issues. It is my humble opinion, and this is my opinion only, that it is, or it was, about sexism and it was about racism. Period. It was hard to see the results of the elections. I was, just a week before, I was in Pennsylvania campaigning for Harris wards, and the response was overwhelming. All of us witnessed $1 billion in donation to this woman, a Black woman. Yet, that didn't have the results of the elections. The people, the Americans who voted, they did not vote on morality. That was not important to them. They voted for a person who was convicted of 34 felonies, a person who lies, a person who disparaged women and especially women of color, a person who pledged to get rid of the federal government and other areas in government, in the White House, our Constitution, So it is either that the Americans, some of them voted for him because that is what they wanted. And the other half that voted for him because they don't believe that he would do what he said he would do. But we know for sure, because in the last 4 years, whatever he said he was going to do, he did. So I don't understand why they would not have believed him. But I'm saying all of this to say that there is still hope. I'm not giving up. We should not give up. We should continue this fight because we are not done yet. From the days of Shirley Chisholm, when she went up to be the president of the United States, women still continue to be present, and we will continue to be present. The fight is not over. We just have to hang in there and do better. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And when we mention takeaway, I don't know if anybody had this experience, but I know I woke up the next day thinking, can I go to work? What does it feel like to be in that space? And then when I was there, it just felt like Murphy's Law, where everything that was wrong was going to go wrong. And I don't know if that really happened, but that's just the feeling and the heaviness that surrounded me, particularly, especially that Wednesday. That was actually Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when we look at the voter turnout, the trends that we see, the current policies, especially that the winning party has already put out, any shifts in the local leadership and national representation, what ways do these results impact these Black moms and their families, whether directly or indirectly?
Yeah, I'd be glad to start that. I think that one of the things that, obviously, um, one of the pressures on Black moms is definitely the mental stability of their children and, the people that they are caretakers to. And so while trying to navigate their own feelings and, toward, the results, um while trying to navigate what, what their plans for the future, what steps are they going to need to take, at work, or, with their colleagues and with their friends and so on and so forth. They have to also consider the needs of their children. And, a lot of times as adults, we do forget that even though, only adults, in the US, people who are 18 and over can vote, the results impact all of us. And, having spent so many years in the schools, and I'm sure, my colleagues on the panel here can attest to it, conversations about elections, especially presidential elections, are, become a topic of discussion in schools. You start hearing it in elementary schools. I used to be a middle school principal. It definitely came out in middle school. Arguments, would be started with teachers, among students. Kids have to deal with the pressures of those persons whose opinion may be different from theirs. And some of those people may be other students, and others, some of those people may even be teachers or administrators in the school. And so, our kids have to deal with those complexities of dealing with people who have different opinions, who may attack them because of their beliefs. And moms have to, deal with that at home as well, when their children come to them asking them for help.
Yeah, I'd love to. Yes, to everything you just said right there, because the the issues are becoming so stark, and moms are experiencing this immediately. I mean, we already are having stories of young girls coming home in tears, having experienced just um, basically we're not going to impose on our young children, what kind of these political parties are spreading, but we're having young boys spewing some of the words, some of the language, and we're having our young girls experience that at such a young age, and the impact that can have. And we are also in a in a story, personal story. I remember canvassing nonstop for the last, I don't know, month, 2 months. And the very last canvas that I did, the very last door that I had to knock before the election, I was faced with a very, very, very hard core Trump supporter, with a lot of like the insignias and everything. And I remember thinking in that moment, I'm alone. I am a woman. This is a dead end street. Um, there's nothing I can do if something goes wrong. There's a probably a minute in that time that I blanked out what happened. I can tell you that I eventually made it back to my car safely, but I had the distinct feeling that someone wanted to come after me, physically. And I sat in that car and I cried. But I remember in the car crying and thinking, you know what? I put my life on the line, literally. However, this is there's a need for this. I have to do this. The the need is too high. I have this will be worth it in the end. Um, and then the results came around, and then following that experience, like jarring, to think that wasn't even enough. And I think that ties into the psychological trauma that happens to the growing population, to us growing into this world, our young kids growing into this world. We have tasted better when it comes to gender equity. We haven't reached it, but we have tasted it. Having tasted it and having it stripped is a new experience for us. And I don't think we give credit to the weight of that and how it impacts growing brains, growing minds who are here to dream about a future, and how that stunts the ability to dream, and that how it impacts us psychologically, mentally, even past childhood. It impacts us now as adults, but imagine our children, the psychological trauma that happens with that kind of experience of like, I thought we were better. I thought we, like, your world starts to crash around you. And I think that is so critical. Hopefully we'll have another opportunity to talk about the mental health focus that we can have to really address that. But that is, I think, we really have to lean into that and to understand that we can't hide from this. This will come back. It will come back whether or not we pay attention to it or we care about it or not. But maybe it's better that we actually intentionally focus on the psychological, mental harm that is happening to us, that is happening to our children growing right now.
I totally agree with you, Steffi. We need to focus on the psychological / mental health of ours, our children, and our future. And hopefully, before the end of the session, we'll can address ways in which we can actually deal with those issues. But like you, when I went to Pennsylvania the week before elections, I went there and they put us in groups. So I was with two young white male, and they said we should separate and go individually and knock on doors. And I said to the two young men, I am not leaving you alone. I'm a Black woman in Pennsylvania, deep Pennsylvania. I am not going to knock on anyone's doors without you being there. The driver of the car who took us out in deep Pennsylvania, she volunteered. Of course, she was white, and she said, I'll go with you. And I said, great, then I'll go by myself with you. And that's how I went and knocked on the doors. On the bus, I met a young lady, Nisha, and we just got to talking. She is of Indian, as in India heritage. She's married to an African American. She has 3 beautiful children, and she had her 2 parents, and that she is also taking care of. So she has a husband, she has teenage children, and she's taking care of her parents. So she's one of what we call the sandwich generation. Can you imagine how hard and difficult this is on her already? This is why she chose to go to Pennsylvania to campaign. Do you know that the day after we came back, I got a text message from her that her mom died the same night that we went to Pennsylvania? How horrible is that? But these things happen. So, and we have to support each other. My dear friend, she's probably on the line right now, Tekla. We were talking today. I thought members of the audience would be able to speak also, but evidently not. But I just want to share her story that happened today. She went to the hairdressing salon and she was wearing a red cap. It did not say MAGA on the cap. And a man passing in the street whipped the hat off of her head. Hello. The hat was red. That's it. No MAGA sign on the hat. And I said, Tekla, you need to come to the meeting today so you can talk about your experience today, because what you will be doing is educating us and perhaps saving a life. Because another crazy person may not whip the hat off of her head, but actually hit her And these are some of the things that we are going to be experiencing, because there are some die-hard MAGA people out there that they do not care, and they follow the example of their leader, Mr. Trump. That's it.
You're muted, Miss Marvin.
Someone muted me. I'm not muted. Did someone mute me? Can you hear me now? Did someone mute me? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. I was just talking. I was saying that for me as a Black mom, as a sister, as an auntie, all of the things, having conversations with my daughter who's 28, we continue to have conversations, right? So as a Black mom, we have to position ourselves to engage in these courageous conversations that our white counterparts are not having to have. So we do have to protect these spaces and create spaces for one another, and tend to our own well-being, while at the same time creating the conditions for our children to still thrive. And when America has revealed her true self, her true self is just blatantly in our faces, in terms of you can be competent, you can be qualified, you can have worked twice as hard and still not get the position that is deserving of you. You know what I'm saying? So we as Black moms have to think about ways to ensure our children are successful, our partners are successful in the midst of all of this. And that can be a heavy burden. As Toyin, you were saying, when you go into the workplace, I had to compartmentalize my disappointment. I had to compartmentalize my feelings in an institution with education where there are layers and layers of racism that permeates through white supremacy culture, and still show up as a leader and police myself in a way that others do not. And that's a lot. That's a lot that we are taking on right now. And as you mentioned earlier, hopefully we'll come back to ways to tend to our well-being.
Yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Dr. Sterling Fox, you mentioned that there was someone in the audience that wanted to unmute. So we wanted to give that person opportunity now if they were willing to share.
Oh, okay.
I'm not the tech guru, but we'll continue. But if that person is here on Zoom and would like to unmute, we would definitely love to hear your contributions as well.
Very good. I'm going to text her.
Okay. And since that topic came up about mental health, she responded already?
No, she sent me a picture with the red hat.
Oh.
I don't know how to share this. I don't know if you can see this.
No. Oh, yeah, we can see it now.
Okay, that's the red hat. Yes. But I'm going to ask her if she's on and she can contribute.
Okay, let me know. Yes.
If I could just add real quick, I've actually had an experience similar to this, the red hat one, but this was way back in 2017. So you can see how the tensions were already, pretty high then. And I attended Cornell University, whose colors are very red, right? And the writings are white. So I was wearing that hat and somebody did scream at me and tell me to take it off. But I responded, no one has any jurisdiction over a particular color. And I think it is within our power to not allow that to happen. So person was like, you know what? And then they walked away. I said, you can take any color you like. Don't allow anybody to own any color in the rainbow.
And all of these events have a psychological impact on us. And it's already mentioned about mental health. So I think this is a great segue if we want to highlight, as we know the results of this election, if moms Black moms are feeling anxious about the future, especially stress management. What are some best practices or supports and strategies you can provide for families?
I think it's important to lean into health and wellness, um, developing habits, daily habits, some self affirmations. Those are things that I engage in personally on a regular basis. In the midst of all that's going on around me, um, giving myself permission to not engage, to disengage, um, not feeling like I have to have all of the answers. Um, Finding a safe space where I can prioritize my own wellness. And for me, that's fitness, that's plants, like finding things that you can decompress from the world and fill your own cup first so that you can pour into those around you and look for those spaces of joy.
Yes, and I am going to talk a little more about that too, since it's that kind of my area of expertise. But I wanted to say that Tekla is on the phone and she is willing, if you unmute her, she's willing to tell her story.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Tekla, if you are able to unmute, we'll go ahead and give you that opportunity now.
Okay. Tekla? Okay, we'll give her a few more minutes. But I wanted to talk about, would I be able to share my screen or not? It's okay if I can't share it.
There should be a present button at the bottom.
Okay, so let me see. Okay, yes, okay, present, share screen, right here, share screen. And I am going to share, not this. Okay, I'm not gonna take up time with this. It's not doing this as I wanted to. No. Please continue. Okay. While I figure this out. Is that okay?
I can go if you like, and then that will give you a little bit more time.
Yes, go right ahead.
Okay,
Please.
sounds good. So in terms of strategies, before even talking about strategies, I did want to really highlight an issue in the Black community, specifically for Black women. We're talking about moms right now, but Black women experience depression. I'm going to say that again. Black women get depressed too. And I don't know why, some reason, we're not allowed to experience depression. We're not allowed to experience mental health issues. We're supposed to be strong all the time. And we're also supposed to be extremely selfless all the time, which has been extremely detrimental to us, our bodies, our mental health. But I just wanted to really emphasize that not only do we experience it, but some of it is so understudied, underappreciated, and we sometimes don't even realize it ourselves. So in terms of numbers, 20%, Black people are 20% more likely to have serious psychological distress than white people. Women in general are 2 times more likely to experience major depression. We're just looking at the genders, but Black women are half as likely to seek mental health. So we're suffering, and we're even less likely to seek help. When we're talking about our girls, this data goes back to like 2019. So there's, this goes back to my point about how we're understudied. But in 2019, Black girls in 9th to 12th grade were 60% more likely to attempt suicide than white girls. And on top of that, we love to copy and paste the answers about, or the symptoms or the presentation of mental health issues from the white population on us, which is really harmful. For so many decades, years, we've ignored the signs of depression and mental health issues in our community because we just had a particular image of it. Just so everybody can understand, Black women experience depression, mental health issues uniquely. It can look like fatigue. It can look like insomnia. It can look like self-criticism, hyper self-criticism. It can look like irritability, which is one I really want to emphasize. Irritability is one that sometimes people can see as like, well, it fuels me. This is how. Irritability is a sign of depression in Black women. I hope people can internalize, look inward, and understand that it may to others it may present as some kind of display of strength, like there's no way you don't need help, but just understand that we are hurt and we need help as well. So with that in mind, I would just kind of exactly as was mentioned before, in order to find solutions, we have to look inward first. You cannot help someone else unless you're also healed. So focus inward, as was said, whether it's shutting out social media for a time, whether it's sitting back, stopping. The priority should be self right now. Even as a parent, if you're not well, that will leak right into your children. If you're not well, that will leak into your relationship with your friends. If you're not well, that will leak into your relationship in your job. If you're not well, that will leak into your ability to manage your finances. By the way, depression is directly linked to poor financial management, and increased anxiety is linked to less likely to seek financial help, to trust financial institutions, to understand structures. This is all directly linked. Financial health is mental health. So it's just really, really critical to take that step back, I think, before trying to seek, trying to fix, trying to find inward first, and respect and kind of lean into seeking mental health resources such as a therapist, removing the stigma around it, encouraging people around us to seek it as well, our community around us, our family around us, and normalize family wide therapy, right? Everybody in the family can get therapy. The whole house can get there. You get there. We're going to turn it to Oprah over here. Everybody gets therapy, and that is okay. Let us heal first. I think priority number one is that.
I definitely wanted to piggyback off of what you were saying, that about how depression presents itself, as someone whose work focuses on schools and children, that I think that it's also important to be aware that kids are going to go through the same very similar signs of depression. A lot of times in children it'll present itself as lethargy, it'll be irritability, it may be a reluctance to eat, it may be isolation from friends or family. You might see changes in a child's behavior in their daily patterns. You may see a decrease in academic performance. And I think it's very important that when these things happen, that moms realize that educators are partners. Educators are those people who see your children about half the time that you do. So if I'm seeing your child for 8-9 hours a day, sometimes more if your child has after school activities, and you're seeing your child for maybe 10 hours a day, and the rest of that time your child is sleeping, we are partners. And if educators point out to you like, hey, I'm seeing some things that concern me, don't push them out. Don't feel like this is a judgment on your parenting ability. This is one person who cares about your child saying, I see something in this child that we care for. Do you see it? What can we do to, help this child get past it? And I think that one of the things that, I usually try to tell people who are parents to do when it comes to situations like this: equip your child with tools. Don't feel like you have to helicopter every single moment of your child's life. And as I said before, these kids are going to encounter people in their lives that are going to attack their beliefs, attack their ideals. Um, uh, some psychologists have done studies on faulty thinking, things that types of thinking that human beings possess that can come across as lacking and may keep us from learning things. And one of the things that they talk about is confirmation bias. And what confirmation bias is the tendency people have to embrace information that supports their beliefs and totally reject information that contradicts their beliefs. And what these researchers found, these are researchers out of Harvard, what these researchers found is that when they presented information, definitive facts that support a position opposite from theirs, the people didn't change their minds. They doubled down on their own stances. They doubled down on their beliefs. And so, knowing that no matter what happens, your kids are going to come across people who are strong in their beliefs. You have to give them the tools to be able to navigate those situations. And that helps take some pressure off of you as a parent. It helps to take some pressure off of the child because now they're prepared to deal with those opposing thoughts and beliefs. They're prepared to address those attacks. And you can go back to being able to be the support that child needs. The teachers can go back to being the support that child needs. And anything else that comes up, you all work together on. But definitely look at your educators as partners.
Yes, thank you for saying that. As an educator, that's really important, that we build that alliance, that we are received on the other end, when we come and we're building an alliance to co co-create and the conditions for children to be successful. And going back to what was said earlier by Steffi, we need to be okay with not being okay. We need to deconstruct the narrative that we have to be strong, that we have to carry the lion's share of the emotional and mental labor to sustain our families. It's okay to not be okay. And I've learned that I have two adult children who are 28 and 22. Only recently was I able to say I'm not okay. And I think we have to give ourselves permission to not be okay and to be able to partner with other people within our community and share some of that. So thank you for uplifting that.
Thank you. I want to add a little to that too. And by the way, I just wanted to say that Makeda is working on getting Tekla to speak in a second, okay? So she's working on it. I wanted to add about some health promoting behaviors that I did my research on. You mentioned some of them, so I'm not going to go into details about any one of them. Stress management, nutrition, exercise, social relationships, spirituality, and health responsibility. I think you know what all the others mean. Health responsibility is you taking responsibility for your own self, which is exactly what my colleague was just speaking about. The one I want to talk about and related to these elections is spirituality. My colleague just a few minutes ago, Ms. Jacote, did I say that right? Mentioned that this concept of confirmation bias. When you believe something and when somebody tell you something opposite, you double down on it and you believe it. If you know, this is exactly what happened in the elections. They stole the election, they stole the election, they stole the election from 2020. And this is the result. But relating it to spirituality, did you see that there were many churches that spoke about Donald Trump as a savior? When people are afraid and people are angry, what do? They look for a savior, someone to save them. They look to faith. So this thing that we call religion, we saw it during the elections. There were people who looked at him as being the Christ. They talked about when during his trials, when he had those trials, and they were this talked about during the Easter time, and they were saying that they were stealing his property at this special time in the year, Easter. There were pastors that talked about Trump. They were saying that if anybody votes for the Democrats, they are not Christians. And that is because Harris and her team were talking about homosexuality and abortion, and in their minds, that is not of Christian faith. And perhaps that is one of the reasons why we lost this election, because there's a whole lot of people out there who believe in spirituality and this thing called Christianity. And if they do look at Trump as being the savior, can you imagine what we are up against? Even if they see the other side of him, his immorality, his derogatory behavior of talking about women, etc., all the ills that he has, and they are still looking at him as the savior. They have confirmation bias, in my opinion. So thank you for sharing that term with me. I didn't know about it before, but thank you. And I see this in this elections here this year.
You're welcome.
Yes, when you were speaking about that, I was like, "Ooh, that's something." Thank you for that information. Yes.
I had another tidbit about the religion part. In terms of the actual numbers, so I'm sure you're all aware that the younger population is less likely to declare a religion. That's just been the state of things for now over a decade. But you can see it in this election as well. I mean, the numbers are in the we're in the 60s, right? So if you I actually have the data here, but in terms of Protestant, is they group like Protestant, all other religion, non-Catholic. We're 72% identify as Republican, and if you're Catholic, 62% identify as Republican. The 71% of people who identify with no religion are more likely to declare themselves Democrat. And we're seeing that number representing more and more of the younger population. And the reason why I want to bring this up is because as you were talking about the confirmation bias and identities and all that, so many conversations I'm having about, when we're talking about abortion, we're talking about women rights issues. So many younger women are experiencing kind of a disassociation from the church, particularly because of the association with some of these issues. They identify a lot of the patriarchal structures within the church, and they're not seeing it as a place to lean on. And we're seeing that in the younger and younger and younger population. And when you see the numbers reflected on, which population votes for which group, that starts to paint a picture. And we're only going to see it increasing as we get, further along. But essentially, this is a generation that grew up with the Catholic Church scandals, right? This is also a generation that is very exposed to social media, so they're able to see the big mega church scandals as well. And we're also able to see within these churches a lot of the information about women and where they belong in society and whether or not they should have the right to choose, or who owns their bodies. I think this is a conversation that really needs to be had, and who gets to own that space. Religion doesn't belong to a particular group, but currently, as it stands, it looks like it does. But yeah, so our children have to grow up in that kind of space as well, and they're making the decision on their own, whether or not they will feed in or not.
And I want to circle back to that point in a second. Thank you for elevating that. What I want to do first is give Tekla, am I saying that correctly, Dr. Sterling Fox?
Yes.
I want to give her an opportunity. I think the issue was resolved. If she wants to unmute now and share her story. Tekla, if you're there, if you can unmute, and then if you start sharing, we'll let you know if we can hear you. All right, so I'm thinking that's not resolved yet. So we'll continue moving forward. But as you were sharing about it's okay to not be okay, and then talking about the spirituality and identification process that moms are going through. When we think about being in the community and we start to have those feelings that arise, how can we empower them to advocate for themselves and the children, especially during this time?
Yeah, I'd like to jump in on that. I think that one of the first steps that one would need to take is to frame your own thoughts, frame your own opinions at this point. Once you're able to, and even if it takes for you to take a moment, with a journal and just write that down. What are my opinions on this particular issue? What are my feelings? What have been my experiences? Even what are some things that are facts? What are some definitive facts, that I'm aware of? First, by bracketing your own experiences, bracketing your thoughts, bracketing your opinions, really does empower you to be able to relay your thoughts in a very coherent way. It allows you to be able to prepare to say the things that you need to say. Bearing in mind, as we were talking before about confirmation bias, I would not put the pressure on myself. If you want to do it, go for it. But I would not put the pressure on myself as a Black woman to be on a crusade to change the minds of all those people who don't agree with me. We have to accept as human beings that there are going to be some people that agree with us on certain issues and some people who don't. And you have to be able to recognize when what you're saying is not well received and learn to step back from it and be able to teach your children that same skill, that sometimes, even if you are right, even if you're presenting definitive evidence, if you're saying the sky is blue, look outside, if that person refuses to believe that the sky is blue, you will stress yourself out trying to change their mind. And so I think there's that bracketing of your own thoughts, bracketing of your own experiences, bracketing even your own biases, and being able to present those ideas, but also having that barometer, that gauge to determine when the conversations you're having with somebody who opposes your thoughts is futile. When you have to know when to fold them, you know when to walk away, And so I definitely think that to be able to do that will relieve some of the stress. Know when to just say, okay, I guess we're going to have to agree to disagree.
And pray.
And pray. Amen.
Definitely.
Amen.
I'm saying that because sometimes that's just the last resort. You leave them alone and you just pray about it and you move on. If you believe in prayer,
Mhm.
which brings us back to spirituality and religion
Mhm.
again. I mean, we all grow up and we have different. The one sane advice that people always give is do not argue when it comes to spirituality or religion and politics. Just
Mhm.
don't argue about those two things. So I am not going to, like you, I'm not going to try to persuade anyone to think the way I think. I can present facts, and it's up to the person to accept these facts, and it's up to them to do the research in order to help them to achieve or to you know reach whatever area they're going to reach, their conclusions. But no. When it comes to children, though, children have a way of following their parents up to a certain age. So your parents might be lucky to get to persuade your children, and then after a certain age, and they become quote unquote intelligent, they're going to do their own research, whether it's on the internet, whether it's well, they don't go to the library anymore, but on the internet, and all the other social media platforms that are out there, they're going to do their research and they will come back to you with questions. And as parents, you have to be prepared to answer those questions and to address the issues that the children may have. Sometimes the issues come from their friends in the classroom or teachers in the classroom. Um, so that's my take on it.
If I can add to that, you both touched on some things that as an educator, we try to foster in the classroom, starting with us framing our thoughts and having those courageous conversations. Glenn Singleton's book about courageous conversations about race, right? Having to have conversations with a black son, your black daughter, at the dinner table, right? Removing the social media as a parent, getting them accustomed to framing their thoughts and talking about our core beliefs as a family, and giving them sentence stems, opportunities to engage in, I call it creative discourse, being prepared to hear something that they don't agree with and having something in their toolkit to be able to say, I hear what you're saying, but and my family, and talking to my mom, this is what we, and this is what we believe, or this is what I'm learning. And then you also, Dr. Sterling Fox, mentioned social media and its influence. As an English teacher, we teach our students to understand how to confirm, to fact check. What are the sources, the multiple sources, the primary, secondary sources? These are things as parents we can do in the home and tell them nowadays you're getting information from social media. That's misinformation. That's not a real news platform. Um, and just really having those conversations and being conscious of where we enter that space. Glenn Singleton talks about sometimes we're entering an emotional space. Maybe we're entering from a moral space, but being cognizant of where we enter that space and being able to have those conversations at home with the children so that they can go out into this world that we're in armed with their full body of armor, because we know that there are going to be holes coming, or bullets. They're being targeted more so now than ever.
Yes, that's actually an amazing like lead up to what I was going to say, in that the starting with ourselves. Having these courageous conversations are so critical, but you can't have it unless you've learned what it is that you might be hesitant about as well. I'm going to bring up a particular topic that is one that commonly known in many parents are uncomfortable having conversations around sexual health with their children, as an example. And what happens when they're not comfortable having that conversation, children will find that information elsewhere. So this is an example of you weren't able to reconcile that with yourself soon enough, and you miss that opportunity to be the voice that your child relies on, or um, that the opportunity for to be the authority essentially on the subject. Just as you're explaining, Kiki, that like say the child is at school and being exposed to different things and would say like, well, no, this is what my parents, they wouldn't have that, because you weren't able to have these conversations. So I would say that even before anything, start with yourself, sit and understand what are you uncomfortable with, because even if you try to have the conversation, if you don't reconcile that, you may not have the best conversation with your child, because children are inquisitive and they will ask the
Yeah.
question, they will push your boundaries way past what you thought you were comfortable with, and if you didn't reconcile with that, they will notice that you start to shut down, and then they realize, oh, okay, that's not the person that should come, or then they start feeling guilty. They're like, oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have asked that. You never want a young growing child to feel guilty about asking questions. They didn't even know it was a difficult question. They were just being inquisitive. And then they learn from you. It's like, oh, is this taboo? I'm not supposed to talk about this here. And then they go to their friend. And then they go on social media. And then they go on YouTube. And then they go in all these different spaces. And they're like, well, I'm not getting it here, so I'm going to get it elsewhere. So I would say start with yourself. Find out like what society has made you feel uncomfortable discussing. And start with that, because you would be a better person for it, and you would be a better shoulder for your those around you, whether it's your children, your family, your friends, etc. And then another thing I would say is that maybe I should put a caveat to it. It's not about the information. A lot of times we spend so many years telling people like, if only we just tell them, they will know. We learn the hard way. It's not really just about informing. People are more likely to lean into like the emotional aspects of information or their background. So the caveat to that is, I would say, their upbringing. So the children who did not have the conversation, how did they lock in these emotions and these feelings about these topics? Well, they didn't have those conversations. They found it somewhere and then they locked in. And then later on, they get exposed to information. And those people are like, well, if I just keep giving you this information, you'll get it. No, they spent an entire childhood into adulthood solidifying these beliefs or solidifying these feelings about things. Maybe they didn't fully develop it, but they spent that time doing that. And then when we are at the end of that road and we're like, I'm just going to give you the book, you'll figure it out. That's not going to do anything because we didn't do that work in the beginning. Where were we then? So I would say just be careful with that, because that's something that we used to say a lot. And I think now we don't say it as much anymore because like the world has flipped upside down. We can never inform someone into believing anything at this point anymore. But last thing I would leave us with is another keyword. I studied communication, specifically strategic public health communication, and kind of a topic that we call like social behavior change. So basically what's going to get people to do something when it relates to public health, like this whole COVID communication, what will get people to do something that will help society, and what gets them to not, and why don't they listen, what do they do? So one thing that comes out of that study or that kind of body of work is the word inoculation is very new in that space, communication. You guys probably heard about it in medicine, inoculation. It means the same thing, which hopefully is helpful. It means the same thing for communication. Inoculation, you use it as a parent, you use it as somebody who's trying to, help your community as a way to introduce the topic. You're inoculating, because that's what vaccines do. You're inoculating with the information because they first heard it from a trusted source, from a factual trusted source first, so that when you get hit the size of the head with the wrong information, you would have already been inoculated with the correct information. So that's a space that parents can occupy for their children. You can be the inoculators. That's a space that you can occupy for your community. That's a space you can occupy for your classroom as educators. That's a space that you can occupy for, whoever it is that you're influencing around you, family, friends, etc. Be inoculators, but understand, to be an effective, great inoculator, you got to be strong at the thing that you're inoculating for, right? So you can't inoculate with misinformation. So learn about your own, biases, learn about the things that you're maybe uncomfortable with, and then just get comfortable with the information that you need to be inoculating, and then do the work. We got this. We're going to do this one way or
Yes.
another.
And I wanted to add to that, I hear you when you speak about doing that self-assessment to determine your strengths and weaknesses and your knowledge, and missing that mark to educate children. I don't think we're going to have a choice at this point in time, because if we miss that mark, that's it. The children will get the information from wherever, because according to Project 25, there will be censoring critical discussions in classrooms. Discussions about race and gender and oppression, systemic oppression, that is. And all of that is in violation to the First Amendment. But if he has his way, he's going to get rid of the Constitution. He is already promising to cut federal funding for schools and that curricula that talks about these subjects. So what my colleague just mentioned is even more important and will become more important in the coming days. That's it.
Yes, and like Dr. Sterling Fox and Steffi said, when we think about where it starts, it should start in the home. And parenting doesn't start when they're 10, 11, 12. You want to start at a young age, start building that foundation, those supports, so that it comes from you and they're not receiving it from outside the home or receive misinformation. Dr. Green, if you are ready for Tekla, we'll try again before we move to our next question. Okay, Dr. Green, are you with us? She's going to try to call in with Tekla to see if we can have her share that way. Unless Dr. Sterling Fox, you were able to call her in instead.
No, I wasn't. I reached her via text, and she said that Makeda was working and she's going to speak after.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Come on. All right. I'm here.
You hearing me?
Can you hear?
We can, but
I'm
there's
hearing, but I'm not hearing.
There's an echo.
Yeah, there's some feedback.
Yes, you will hear some feedback. Is this better?
I believe
I'm
so.
hearing. Everybody hearing?
Yes, they can hear you.
Okay, good night.
Nice.
I wasn't planning to be on this Zoom to speak. But Cynthia just called me last minute, and when I heard about it was about the election and everything, I just tell her about my experience. I just have on this red cap, and I went to the nail salon, and this guy walked up and knocked the hat off my head. And I know him, so I turned around and I looked at him, and I'm like, what's going on? And he said to me, are you crazy? Did you naturally put that man in the White House? I didn't even think about ladies. I never even think about the hat being red have anything to do with the conflict. So my daughter took the hat from me and put it in the bag, and I couldn't wear the hat anymore because everybody in the saloon was staring me down. And it's innocent because I could have been hurt, and I didn't even think about it, So that was my experience that Cynthia bring me in to share with you ladies. Unfortunately, I'm going to feel back. So you're having a hard time hearing what I'm saying, right?
Oh, we heard you.
I just want to say one thing. before we get off the phone. This election has really, really got me in a funk.
Mm.
I never really taken any election as serious as this one.
Yeah.
And it shows me how America has no principles. The people that put this man there, they didn't vote on policies and procedure, they didn't, nothing. It was all about, like one of the sisters said earlier on, racism and sexism. That's it. So that's all I just want to say. It's sad. And we just beginning. As a Black, educated woman, Caribbean woman, we have a lot of steps to climb. A lot. So we really have to get together and keep each other in prayer and support each other. And mental health, like they keep saying, we gotta take care of ourselves. And thank you so much. Just keep doing what you're doing. I'm so proud of you, Mika.
Thank you
She's
so much
doing great
for
things. That's my baby. That's my baby.
Oh. Thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing that story with us so that we can help support those that are having similar experiences. We really appreciate you for calling in to share that.
Thank you.
And I know there are other moms or moms that have experienced microaggression. So when we think about that, what are some ways that we can help them navigate or manage those conflicts or reduce them when they are in those spaces when microaggression takes place?
Are you referencing the children or the parents?
We can speak to both.
Both.
Mhm.
I think, again, as a parent, it's about arming ourselves with the tools first, building those community partnerships, and being able to advocate for our children, having those open discussions about what's going on at your school, your experiences, and being open, and also arming our children with the vocabulary, with the terms. We're having to have conversations with our children that our white counterparts don't have to have. It has to become, we have to normalize that. We have to be able to advocate for them, but also teach them how to advocate for themselves and knowing what is in our community. Where are our community partnerships? What's happening at the church? What are the organizations available to us to build that community for the village, right? That's where I grew up, with the understanding that there was a village. They filled in the gaps for us where my parents didn't have the skills or the knowledge. We have to be willing to show vulnerability, like our guest speak, or the person was just speaking, and being okay with asking for help.
Yeah, and I think that's something that I'm glad you brought up that. I think that's something that a lot of Black women struggle with, is asking for help. That we unfortunately, and even until now, have navigated under this trope of being independent. But at the same time, part of being independent is knowing when you need help and knowing the sources to go to when you need help, and being able to teach our children the same thing. I think that one of the worst things that we do to ourselves and our children is to tell them that you don't need anybody. You don't need anybody to help you. You don't need to ask them for help. Unfortunately, I grew up with the same, uh, words in my mind. My mother would say all the time, "Oh, don't ask for help. If you don't have something, do without." And that was just it's it's faulty, you know, it's faulty teaching. And, you know, we have to understand that I used to always tell the kids that I worked with, if trouble finds you, find the nearest adult. So when they're dealing with microaggressions, whether it's from other adults or whether it's from other children, you know, being able to recognize that. A lot of times we know what when we've encountered a microaggression because we can feel it. That little twinge in your soul, that little tightness in your belly, that little tightness in your heart that you feel where you are slightly offended by what this person just said or did, you know, and you may not know why, it may not be blatant, you know, but because it's a microaggression, it bothers you. And being able to recognize, you know, when something bothers you and, you know, who to go to is very important to equip children with. And just in general, as adults, you know, just recognizing that, you know, we as, you know, mothers and aunts and grandmothers, we of course are going to encounter those things. And we've developed our tools throughout the years to deal with those things as they come. But I like to think of times like this as an opportunity to inventory your tools and to reorganize your toolbox and to think about what things to get rid of and what things to keep. You know, I think about my life, you know, as someone in her 40s, you know, the way I would have reacted to something 10 years ago or even 20 years ago, you know, as a college student, even as a high school student, the way I would have reacted to a microaggression back then is completely different from the way I react now. And it's because you have to reevaluate your toolbox. And so I think that taking inventory of what works for us, you know, as adults and what things we can do to equip our children and passing those tools on to them is important and helping them inventory their toolbox as well.
I think I hear you, and I totally agree with you. But I'm just wondering if we really need to be concerned about microaggression when we know that macroaggression will be taking place. Stop and frisk is coming back just because you're black, you know, and there are going to be other changes too.
Um,
I get very concerned and very emotional because I have a young son and I have a daughter and they're grown, you know, and I can just imagine the children. Who are they going to turn to? Our president is supposed to be our leader, but when Project 25 takes away those rights, the right to protest in the street, the right to your opinion, all of those things are probably we're going to probably lose a lot of those rights. Even as an immigrant, I don't know if you remember, but in the last 4 years when he was president, there were a lot of complaints in Brooklyn where ICE was going into churches and supermarkets and Tekla, the hairdressing salons. They were going there and just taking people up, and if they didn't have their green card or ID, and I'm a citizen, but I used to walk with my passport just to be on the safe side. I just can't imagine what this is going to be like in the next 4 years. I'm still hoping that it's not going to be the same, you know. But when you have the experience, now you're a little fearful and become really concerned. But again, the reason why we are having all of these discussions is ultimately to find ways of dealing with some of these issues that we know we will face, and we have to talk about some of those. How are we going to deal with those issues before we end tonight?
if I can follow, so the yeah, um, this is tough. You bring up an excellent point about the macroaggressions that we're going to be facing. I mean, sometimes even thinking about it is it's hard to wrap your head around. I would still though encourage us not to dismiss the harms of the microaggressions, because one way I can describe it is like 1 million tiny stabs. And they're usually invisible to other people. One, I don't want to say benefit, but one less harmful thing about macroaggressions is that they're visible. And there's something sort of validating about visible aggression. And this is something we've been struggling with as a society, in that, the era, civil rights, pre-civil, like lynching is a visible aggression. Today, it's even harder to prove aggression, microaggression, and harm against us as Black people, because sometimes it's very clever and invisible and micro. And it's because it becomes that, it starts to degrade at our own personal, physical, mental selves. And I think because, and also another aspect of health, our mental health, is that sometimes when you can't control an outcome, you almost feel powerless. The powerlessness that can come from the macro things really can cause harm. However, if there's something we can do about the smaller stuff, maybe let's focus attention on that. Because it really leaves us feeling helpless. It leaves our younger people, our children, feeling helpless when they can't do the bigger things, which is why I think a lot of people say focus on local and things like that. But one example, I'm Haitian American. I'm also a veterinarian. I have not met a single Haitian vet in the United States. So if there's one out there, please find me. When Trump made that comment about us, I will not repeat, because I work in communication and I encourage everybody to understand that repeating lies and repeating falsehoods actually perpetuates it. I don't need to repeat it. You know what I'm talking about, but I'm not going to do the job of the ones who cause harm. When that lie was perpetuated about us on a national stage, it seemed like a joke. Even people who were trying to, joke, they knew that it was wrong, it was outrageous, and they were like, how dare you? Even those people were still perpetuating it. They were making jokes out of it. What would we call that? We wouldn't call that a macroaggression, right? We would call that a microaggression. However, the harm, I'm still today like piecing myself together. Our community was shattered. I mean, we're hearing stories about my people who, like, they're not sending their kids to school. They're afraid. They just uprooted their lives to move there, and they're hiding themselves at home. They can't go anywhere. They can't go to the supermarket. If they go, they have a strategy. We got to go together, husband, wife together. I can't show myself as, and the kids are like, what is happening? They're trying to make sense of it. They don't even understand why somebody would hate them for no reason. Like, they can't. So these are harmful. That's not even a policy. That is harmful. So I think like this is the stuff that like really eats at us, and the stuff that makes us makes our shoulders hunch a little bit, makes us feel heavier, makes us feel like the world is closing in. It becomes darker and smaller, and all of these symptoms of mental health crises just start colliding together. And sometimes when people are stressed and they're anxious and they're having depression, they lash out at the people around them. So when you're in a situation like that, God forbid, we don't want a stressed out family to start lashing out at their kids, or like the kids to start breaking out and lashing out at their sibling. That's what happens when that stuff is not dealt with, and it just breaks apart. And then the family structure starts breaking apart because the world is crashing in on you, and you're trying to implode inward in the home, and everybody's like, what, I just want to escape. And then the kids end up leaving home, and they're like, people are assigning blame in the wrong places. It's got to be dealt with. We've got to deal with the small stuff that eats at us. And the last thing I would say about a strategy, when you're into these interpersonal conversations, you're at the workspace, you're talking to your friends, the microaggression that comes with comments that are like, they feel harmful, and you're kind of like, what? I'm a trained intergroup dialogue facilitator, and that's something that comes up all the time. What I always recommend for people to do when you hear comments like that, practice what it is that's going to come out of your body. Because when you don't say something, it becomes yours. That doesn't belong to you. That harm is not yours. give it right back. But how do you give it back is something that will, you'll find your comfort level. Some things that I've advised people, find a sound that makes sense to you. If somebody says something odd, you're like, that's a sound you just made. You just pat it back out. Make sure they hear it. Or perhaps your response is, what did you mean by that? You start being inquisitive. Push it back out. Excuse me? Push it back out. Whatever it is that you're comfortable with, don't practice not to feel like a deer in headlight when it happens. I hate that we have to almost expect it, but practice it. Somebody's going to eventually say something to you and you're going to feel shocked about it. But in that immediate moment, while you feel shocked, just let something out. Don't hold the silence, because the silence allows it to perpetuate, but also it makes it your trauma. Don't hold that trauma in. Sorry, we're not doing that anymore. Push it back out, whatever it is. And you know what? After you pushed it back out, you might have asked a question, what do you mean by that? And they start tripping over their words. You're like, okay, you don't need to engage. You already pushed it back out. Let them have to deal with the consequences of the words that came out of their mouth. So that's my recommendation when you deal with these microaggressions, and teach that to your kids as well, because they're going to be in school. They're going to deal with that. Push it out. They're going to come throw stuff at you. They think you're going to be a sponge absorbing all this racism, all this sexism, all this misogyny, and you're supposed to allow it to happen. Nope, we're not doing that anymore. Push it out. Push it out. We're giving it right back. Here it is. I don't need that today. Thank you very much. I'm going to live my blessed, joyful life. So that's my biggest recommendation for us, for our kids, for anybody around us.
It's a theme for the night.
And I'm glad you said that, because if I can be personal for a second, sometimes I straddle the line of being the stereotypical angry Black woman. And it's like, no, I'm just telling you how I feel. And then it's like you go between, okay, I shouldn't have said it that way. I should have said it this way. And then, but I'm glad you said that, because it kind of empowers you. Like, okay, I'm valid in how I'm feeling, and this is not okay. But I know for me, sometimes I struggle with okay, how do I say this so I don't come off in this stereotype that I'm already seeing before I even walk into the room? Like, they see my color before they see me,
Right. I love that you said that. And thank you for being vulnerable, because what I'm hearing is we subconsciously, internally police ourselves, right? As we straddle, we're processing, and in partnership with our equity department in Montgomery County, we rolled out professional learning with the speak up protocols, where you were saying, say something, and that gives life to the energy to shift, and for someone to know that this is not okay. And that's building, as was mentioned earlier, those tools, building a mental profiles in our minds to be prepared to have something to respond in that moment. Because we as Black women have been taught to suppress, internalize, as opposed to speaking up and releasing that. And we have to get comfortable with shifting that energy back onto someone else when things are said that are not okay, and not being seen as the angry woman, but the person that has a right to be offended, to feel offended.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I wanted to pose the last question to the group. This has been so rich. I'm learning so much. And I know the others that are here are, taking it in. If I'm feeling the way I'm feeling, I'm hopeful, and I know others are as well. But my last question to the panelists, just for families that are watching or that will see this later on, what are your final nuggets? Like, what resource or groups or networks would you recommend for them to stay in contact, or just how can they find solace and comfort as we transition through this next candidate?
Next 4 years.
Yes, next 4 years.
Well, in terms of resources for your children, definitely reach out directly to your child's teacher. That person, is the first line of resource for any issues that your child may be having. Asking, your fellow, asking your educator, you know, have you noticed A, B, and C? Or have you observed this? You know, I noticed this. What do you think? Is a great way to start that conversation. And then from there, schools can provide a lot of resources that you may need to help your children, whether they're dealing with depression, anxiety, or any other form of, mental health, strains. You know, schools are a great place to start. A lot of times they will refer you to a school counselor who also has access to a number of resources that can help your child. But most importantly, moms, take care of yourselves. Gotta take care of yourself before you take care of the babies.
Mhm. Mhm. Yes, I think my last words and nuggets go back to what I said earlier about creating a safe space for ourselves and prioritizing our well-being, pouring into our cup, developing mindfulness strategies, being cognizant of how we enter spaces with others, and giving ourselves permission to not enter a space, giving ourselves permission to not be okay. And sometimes advocating for our children, as you said, but also in my line of work, I know that sometimes teachers may not have the cultural competency to navigate and support our children of color. So asking questions, I not and identifying mental health resources, but just understanding the trusted adults that are in the spaces with our children and making sure that they're like-minded individuals, right? It goes back to those core beliefs, because I'm not going to reach out to a teacher who might be inflicting harm on my child. But just knowing all, it's a lot. It's complex. It's complex, but just knowing that it's okay for us to disengage and find resources out elsewhere to, like our churches in our community.
Dr. Sterling Fox, you're muted.
That's correct. I'm sorry. Okay. I just wanted to add that one of the first organizations or group that I would recommend to moms and out there is Black Moms Society. It's rich. She has a lot to offer. So please reach out to Black Moms Society. I like Higher Heights from a political standpoint. I like Higher Heights. It's again primarily women of all different ages and cultural backgrounds and everything. Those are that's the group that I went to Pennsylvania with. And again, I just bonded with one person, but it could have been many that I could have bonded with. And I like Move On. That's another organization that I support from a political perspective. And I think as the days go by and as 2025 begins, we will certainly need to support some of these organizations. Granted, I was really unhappy when I got a text message from one of these organizations asking again for donations right after we heard the results of the elections. I'm like, what? I didn't like it, but I think I have gone through the stages of grieving so far. I have, and I am at a point where I am saying, this is not over. We cannot give up at this point in time. We have to push on, and we have to get involved in these organizations and give it a chance again. Lastly, I want to say that we have to take care of ourselves first. and foremost. Must take care of ourselves first before we can help anyone else. And I love the 6 stages, the 6 health promoting behaviors that I mentioned earlier. You have children and you want to exercise, but you don't have the time. Well, grab the child and make the child the weights. And you can do the exercise with the child. The child is about 20 pounds. You can lift 20 pounds. You can do some push-ups with the child on your back or in your arms. I tell my clients, you can exercise just for the 2 minutes of that program, the advertisement of that program that you are watching every night. During that advertisement, just get up and jump rope. Just get up and skip. Just get up and do something. And when the commercial is done, you sit down and continue to watch your show. Before the 1 hour show ends, guess what? You'll be sweating because you've been doing simple things like that. We have to take care of ourselves. Health responsibility. We have to take care of ourselves. When was the last time you had your pap smear? When was the last time you had your mammogram? When was the last time you got your flu vaccine? We have to take care of that's health responsibility. And as moms and as parents, we have to not only take care of ourselves, but our children. And guess what? Our husbands or our man, because he's not going to make that appointment. And that's your responsibility too. We have to assume all of that. So it's a lot of work for us to do as women, in addition to navigating this whole new life that we expect to find in 2025. Individually, it might be difficult, but collectively, they can't touch us. And we have to keep the faith and keep hoping and keep praying and keep doing. That's it.
Yeah, that's you just passed the baton right to me, Dr. Sterling Fox, because speaking of baton, that's exactly right. Community is so important. You have to take care of yourself, and it's not a straight road. Self-care is not a straight road. You might be doing really well for a month, for a year, and then you're not. So it's important to understand that it's an ever-going journey. And when you're not your best and when you need time for yourself to recharge, to regrow, to relearn, what really will help you keep going is to have that community around you, because you can hand the baton up to them and be like, you know what? I'm tapping out for right now. You guys got it. I'm gonna be back, but I can't do it right now. And they will say, we got you, sis. Take your time. We got you. An example that I heard about earlier today is really fitting is think about a choir, like all the people in a choir singing. What happens when you run out of breath as a member of the choir?
Nothing.
Correct. You stop, you take a breath, but everybody still hears the music. And that's what we have to work on building, the community, so the music can keep on going. And that's what we've got. The music is going to keep us alive. It's going to give us the time to heal, get back on it. If we got to take another break, if our next door neighbors got to take a break, that's okay. The music will keep going. And I think this is an opportunity for us to reflect on where that community is, where the linkages need to get strengthened, maybe. We got to reconnect it. We got to make it stronger. Some of that community might be the teachers you're talking to. You might have those teachers you're like, Miss So-and-so is amazing. Like, you built that relationship, and like, you really are going to make a teacher's day if you like recognize all the work that they're doing and make sure, listen, I have seen it. I'm in a family of teachers. Okay. Build a relationship with the libraries. So our librarians are doing an amazing job. Okay. Like, there's not a librarian that I have met that I'm like, I love you. I've never interacted with you before, but I love you so much for what you're doing for us. And these books are just free. Like, the idea of it, like, just show the love and appreciation for those of us out there who are doing that kind of work. Build those bridges, build those bonds, build that community, lean on that community. I do want to warn as well, there are some organizations who are perhaps not working towards that, and it's important to know who they are. I recommend, say, Moms Demand Action, Black Mamas Matter Alliance, Blackmomsociety, like, those organizations we can trust, but recognize that there's organization, for example, Moms for Liberty, recognize who they are, who are not here to help our children thrive. They are the ones who are behind the book bans. They are in Maryland. They are in Texas. They are in the Carolina. They are active, and many of them aren't even parents, to be honest. But recognize who is not here for your child's best interest. Recognize who is part of that community and strengthen that community, and allow yourself to have space to heal. Because when your community is healthy and strong, you don't have to feel like you're carrying everything on your own, on your shoulders. And that will help with the children as well. Moms can take a break too. Don't have to be on 100% of the time, even though society tells them they have to do that. It's okay to be like, you know what, I'm tired of these kids today. You're going to go to grandma's house, or you're going to go to grandpa's house, or, you know, it's okay. It's okay to be tired. But yeah, so strengthening that community and making sure that you allow yourself to take a step back when you need, and feel guilt-free about doing it. That's another thing. The guilt that can really weigh on moms, on Black women, Black moms, about just not being 100% of the time. Maybe it's time we just start letting go, strip it away. You don't have to feel any guilt about taking a break. So yeah.
Thank you.
Is it appropriate to say amen? Amen, amen.
Yes, amen and amen.
Amen.
I wanted to take a moment just to acknowledge the comments that came in from YouTube, as well as through other social media platforms. So Mia Gatlin, she gave us a yes. It's very hard to deal with one of the earlier topics that we were talking about. Dr. Green did put the link for the Courageous Conversation, a resource that Ms. Marvin mentioned. There's a direct link for that. Cameron said that, I love the idea of creative discourse. Thanks for this jewel. Jacqueline Green said, interest in discourse. Love it. Lynn says, love the discussion. And Cherise Rollick said, self-care is very important. And thank you again to Tekla for joining and being vulnerable and sharing that story with us. And thank you so much to our panelists, Dr. Green and Black Mom Society, for giving us this space where we can come to support each other.
Can I say one last thing?
Absolutely.
Please. I've heard this before. My deceased husband always said, whenever the Republicans are in power, he does better. He was a CPA and an accountant. I've heard, my friend told me recently that the church that she sometimes attend, that the pastor of the church, and this is a mega church, says that when the Republicans are in power, he does better. And I want to say, maybe this is something that we have to think about. One of my colleagues mentioned earlier about financial health. Perhaps, and I'm just showing it out there, if you have the monies to invest, maybe now is a good time to put it in the stock market. Maybe it will grow. If you're in that susu, or if you didn't join the susu, maybe you can join the susu with a couple of friends and use the monies to buy a property. Maybe now is the time. If it is indeed true that from a financial perspective, when the Republicans are in power, people do well. Just a thought.
Thank you so much for that as well. Does anybody else have any last comments or statements for moms? Okay. Well, thank you so much again. I really appreciate you being here to share your expertise with the platform.
Thank you for having me. This is a privilege.
Absolutely. It's been great.
Yes. I'm so proud to be among all these young women. Thank you for having me with you, and I'm looking forward to continue working with you.
Yes.
Proud
Absolutely.
of you, proud of what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you. We want to say thank you so much for being with us. We have been discussing for over an hour. Clearly, we were not done. There was so much more that we could have said. Thankfully, that we will be continuing this series. This came out of a labor of love. I wanted to do this just to do something for to continue to provide the truth that is there within our communities, to encourage that our families and our moms and our women to and our just our community in general to ask questions, ask the right people the questions, get the right people to the seat at the table, right? To Congress, to Senate, to the President of the United States. The whole point is to get us to start being accountable and to be a part of the conversation, because a lot of what happens within our families and our homes happens in the local elections, happens at our local community school boards, happens at even within our within our hospital boards, within the community nonprofits, the liaisons, everything that's happening within our families happens at the local level. And that is where a lot of the conversations start and begin, and we cannot let it end there. So I am continuing these series throughout the rest of the year, with different topics that do impact us as women, as moms, as people, as a community. I thank you for being here tonight with us. I know it's a Saturday, we can be doing other things, but we are here discussing ways that we can navigate for the next chapter. Navigating the next chapter Navigating the next chapter is how you want to navigate it, but navigating it in a healthy way, navigating it in a way that makes sense for you, yourself, your being, and for the wellness of your families. Thinking about what you are trying to, even though what has happened, whether it was for in your favor or not in your favor, understanding the impact that it has, and understanding your impact that it has on others. As Steffi had mentioned earlier, understanding the language and the communication that we are displaying, the presentation that that we are having every single day. There are a couple of us on this panel that actually work together, and I experienced unkind heckling that has happened thus far. And unfortunately, you would think that it would be in a safe space as an educational setting or a learning community, but unfortunately not. And we all mentioned this earlier, that our views and the way in which we navigate and work is so tied into all of this. So we just have to be mindful of all of this. I hope everyone has learned something today, has even just was able to release something, whatever it was. But we are here. Please make sure to follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. We are here. And so and our website, www.blackmomsociety.com. We are also on podcast, Motherhood Unplugged. And all of these lovely women will be a part of that podcast in some way or another. Please make sure to also follow these lovely ladies as well. They are doing some great things. And their bios don't even give them justice to what they are truly doing in the community. They are true pillars, leaders and pillars of their community, and we are so thankful to have them. Thank you to Ms. Tekla for sharing such a courageous story. It's not easy to share what's happening, especially something so personal. But we are here to affirm, here to tell you that that was not okay, and that we have to continue to affirm us, because we have to make sure that we continue to make us visible in an invisible space. And although they may want to dim our light, they cannot do so. And so we will continue to light, we will continue to shine, we will continue to affirm us and make sure that we are a part of the story and part of the table as much as possible, even if we have to bring a folding chair, as Shirley Chisholm told us way back when. I remember that in women's studies, so in our women's studies classes. So with that being said, thank you so much, and we will see you soon.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Take care.
Bye.